There, there we go. So this training today is supervisor as trainer. We're glad you're all here. We would like you, whenever possible, to keep your video on so we can see you. It makes for a better training experience if we can see how you're doing and what's going on. Obviously, if you have connectivity problems and so on, and need to, you can go ahead and turn it off. But we like seeing your faces. So thank you for joining us. Our trainer today is Brenda Wilson Codaspati. Am I saying it even close?
Yeah, Codaspati. That was really good.
Okay, well, I have as dramatic as we can fight about how things.
We can.
Yeah, and so I'm going to let Brenda. Introduce herself after we do some quick housekeeping. It looks like, can everybody at least try to turn on their camera so we know you can, even if it's briefly? Yeah, I see Key and Maria. All right, thank you.
Great.
Hey, Cecilia. All right, and you all know how to mute and unmute yourself. Please be mute when you're not speaking because it helps with the background noise, but we do want you to speak up and ask questions. Y'all know where the chat box is. If you want to try putting your name and what office you're from in the chat for us, that would be helpful to make sure. Hi, Joe. Nice to see you real quick.
Hi.
We just want to make sure you all know where the chat box is, and you can use the reaction buttons if you'd like. And please let us know if you have to step away. You can put, what is it? BRB, be right back, in the chat so we know not to call on you. If you have any problems, I am the person to message in the chat and say, hey, I'm having a problem. Can you help me troubleshoot it? It doesn't mean I'm very good at it, but I'll certainly try to help you. And with that, I am going to let Brenda take over and introduce herself. I think you're going to have a wonderful training today.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you. I'm really pleased to join you all to facilitate this module on the role of the APS supervisor as trainer. So just to share with you a little background about myself, I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, a master's in social work. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I previously have worked for the past 20 years for the County of Orange in sunny Orange, California. And for the past 5 years, when I worked for social services, I was the training manager of the training department for social services. So I provided oversight for almost 4,300 employees for all of the training for social services. Now, prior to that, I worked for Adult Protective Services for 11 years, 4 years as a senior social worker and 7 years as a supervisor. And actually, this was probably my most favorite job over the course of my career. Don't tell anybody that, but I really have a real passion for working with this population. And working for APS, I was the lead trainer. I was considered a subject matter expert. I teamed and trained with advocates from domestic violence abuse agencies, law enforcement, elder law attorneys, and we trained on late life domestic abuse. And this was part of a federal grant through the Office of Violence Against Women. I created training and trained judicial officers in Orange County regarding considerations when issuing elder and dependent adult restraining orders. I trained several banks, credit unions, and elder law attorneys in 2006 and 2007 when financial institutions became mandated reporters of financial abuse. I represented APS on the Orange County Family Violence Council for 8 years, was part of the Orange County Family Justice Center for 7 years, and I provided oversight of the Orange County Police Outstation Project and routinely provided training to law enforcement. I have presented at numerous conferences, including the California Bankers Association, our very own NAPSA, and the California Welfare Directors Association. In addition to some of my work with APS and social services, I've also worked as a part-time instructor for Cypress Community College in the Human Services Department for the last 16 years, which has really helped to keep me off the streets at night, which is good. So that gives you a little information about my background and history and some fun stuff that I've been involved in the past few years. So as APS supervisors, you all know the many different responsibilities that are part of your job. So I want to take a minute to hear from all of you. And I'd like to ask you to type in the chat and share just a few of the tasks that you carry out as part of your job. And Lori will kind of help us go through some of the responses that you're sharing. So I'd like you to take a moment and just reflect on that question and type in the chat. We'll give you a minute or so to do that.
And while people are typing, if the person who called in on telephone number will let us know who they are, I will change your name so that we can identify you as we're going forward.
Yeah, so if you would like to list some of the different jobs that you do, some of the different tasks that you carry out in your role, love to hear from you. Go ahead and feel free to type that in the chat.
I see people typing, so.
Okay.
Jessica says, training, guiding, developing, and supporting our call center agents in a leadership role. Joe says, providing mentoring and support to the unit supervisors, oversee the daily operations of the district. Rita says, we assign cases, review cases, staff cases, answer telephone calls. Oops, it slipped away from me. Let's see. Answer telephone calls and emails. We do huddles, maps. I don't know what maps are, and put fires out on a daily basis. Cross
Right.
to DHS. The ombudsman provide training to our staff. Maria says we assign cases, review cases, staff cases, answer community client and provider calls, provide support to investigators and HSW therapists. Parent role, at least it feels like it. Bree says staff case reviews, assigned cases, consultation, leave requests, lots of meetings, training and mentoring, lots of phone calls.
Oh, these are all really great responses.
Lisa, staff development, keeping APS teams in alignment with agency goals, personnel issues, support the supervisors in their role, oversee the district and provide guidance as needed. We've got a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah, we sure do. Well, great responses. You know, being an APS supervisor, it looks like one of the hardest jobs in the agency. You know, there's a lot of spinning plates in the air. You're wearing a lot of different hats. And you can see some of the responses that we have on the slide here, which you came up with a lot of these. And given all these multiple tasks, we know it can be really challenging to carve out the time to train not only new staff, but also your experienced staff. And you may even hold the belief that this is kind of the responsibility of the agency trainers. However, it's important to recognize that your role as a supervisor and your role as a trainer are interchangeable. You're always training your staff, not only in formal ways, where they may be attending virtual or in classroom training or e-learning, but also in the way that you model professional behaviors and attitudes to your team. The way you interact with your peers, your supervisors, other departments, and community partners is constantly being observed. So your role as a trainer can take on many forms that we're going to talk about in this module. For example, you may be the sole trainer for your unit, and I know I was often in that position myself. Or training as a supervisor could look like coaching your staff in individual supervision or in a team meeting where you're asking questions to help prompt your staff's critical thinking. It may take on the form of integrating activities after staff attend a formal training in order to support that transfer of learning piece from what they learned in the training and applying those concepts to the field. So in thinking about a transfer of learning activity, it could be, hey, maybe you just sent your staff to a couple of days to attend formal training to learn about a new risk assessment tool that's going to be rolled out in the existing assessment in 30 days. So to support competence with your staff being able to feel like they can use this tool, maybe you organize an activity, like you're working with the team in the computer lab for a few hours a week, or in smaller groups, to ensure that they feel comfortable so that they have that repetition and they're able to use this tool confidently when it rolls out. Or maybe you have one of your staff that's doing really well as a champion using the tool. So you might ask them to help mentor their peers with mastering the use of this tool. So it kind of gives you an example of what putting together a transfer of learning activity could look like to help reinforce some training that they received. So whether you're a new supervisor or a seasoned supervisor, you already have the knowledge, experience, and skills that are going to serve you well in training your staff, because that's why you're in the position that you were chosen for. So this session is going to focus on providing you additional information. We're going to focus on techniques that you can use to enhance your abilities and build your comfort level in carrying out your role as a trainer. So let's go over the training topics today. So we're going to cover together today how the adult brain learns. What does that look like in the brain? What's kind of going on chemically in regards to adult learning? We're going to look at the various settings in which training can take place and look at some of the different training techniques that you can use. We're going to look at the 4 different phases of learning and their implications for training. And we're going to finish with evaluating the effectiveness of training. How will you know if it's successful? How will you know if they got it? If they are really able to apply and transfer those new concepts and that information they were learning. We're also going to share some tips for new supervisors. And you're going to become familiar with the additional materials in the participant guide. We're going to point you to some of that great information that you have in your guide. So are there any questions before we get started? So feel free to unmute yourself, or you can tap something, type something into the chat.
Brenda, we'd like to hear from the person on the phone what their name is. I know they probably don't have access to the chat to put it in. So please let us know. I know Parisa needs to be able to give you credit, as well as we want to be able to call you.
Okay. So can the person calling in, telephoning in, go ahead and share your name with us?
You're on mute right now.
Yeah, so you'll need to unmute yourself. Okay.
Hello, this is Jessica. I think my phone, because I'm unable to call from the laptop, is the one showing up, but I also have my name at the top. So
Oh,
just disregard
great,
that.
Jessica.
That's me.
All right,
That's Jessica
good.
causing problems early in the morning.
That's okay. I'm going to write Jessica's phone on there so we know who you are. Thank you. And
Thank
now
you,
let's
Jessica.
kind of, please repeat your question to the group. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we kind of went over the different topics that we're going to talk about today, and we're going to go ahead and get started, but I just wanted to make sure there weren't any questions for myself or Lori or any additional comments before we go ahead and take off and get going. And with that, let's go on to our next slide. So we're going to talk a little bit about how adults learn. And there are numerous adult learning theories out there, but most share some common principles. So let's talk about those common principles. And the first principle is this idea: we build new knowledge as adults on top of what we already know. So we're always making connections between new information and existing information. And learning's not only about just gaining the knowledge, but being able to make sense of it, being able to apply it, and being able to use it. So just to give you an example of what this could look like is maybe you have a worker that's new to APS, and perhaps maybe they had some prior experience working with a domestic abuse agency. Now, because they have an understanding of what a domestic abuse relationship looks like, partner to partner, they're going to be able to build on that knowledge and expand it to be able to understand what a domestic abuse relationship can look like with an older adult or an individual with a disability. As we know, sometimes it's not partner to partner in this type of relationship. It could be the daughter, the grandson. So this kind of gives you an example, and it's kind of how I see it, this idea of making connections between existing information and new information. So learning is really a lifelong process of building knowledge and skills and attitudes. We're continually taking in new information and adapting changes and needs as they arise during our lives. We have our own experiences as learners. We have our limits and ways, best ways that we are able to learn. Some learners benefit from having visual information, right? They're visual learners, while others may prefer to listen and discuss information with other individuals. So let's look more closely at how our brain functions as we're exposed to new experiences and information. So I'm going to take a look at that. What's chemically going on kind of in our brain? Well, in our brain, we have brain cells called neurons. And our brains form connections between neurons to form networks, or what we call neural pathways. When we're exposed to new information or experiences, the brain's networks can reorganize and they can grow. This ability is called plasticity. Now, young brains have the greatest amount of plasticity, but as we age, we lose some of this plasticity, so making new networks or pathways may not happen as easily. However, as long as our brains are stimulated, and this is good news, they can remain capable of connecting new information to those existing neurons and neural pathways and continue to grow and adapt. We're all lifelong learners, and as trainers, we can apply what we understand about adult learning and brain function as we support staff at all different levels in developing their knowledge, skills, and attitudes. So before we go ahead and move on, are there any questions or comments about what I've just gone over with you, about kind of what's chemically going on with your brain and your brain's ability to grow and adapt? Okay, with that, we'll go on and talk about some characteristics of adult learners. Although every learner is different, most adults share common characteristics when it comes to learning. So I'd like you to reflect on that for a couple of moments, and please share one or two things you think that adult learners have in common. So just feel free to type in the chat a couple of things about adult learners that you think they have in common. And Lori will help us go through some of those responses, and then we'll take a look at some responses that we have on the slide.
All right.
All right. Yeah. It takes longer to learn a new task. Mm-hmm.
It takes longer, bring more experience, is from Ed. They want to know more things, says Rita. Joe, they want to learn. I would add, adult learners want to know how to do a good job, and they're not necessarily interested in everything else. Want to learn more from Jessica.
Yeah. So those are great responses, and we'll kind of see what additional information that we've got here. They want to build on what they already know. And I think adult learners are often really motivated, right? They're ready, they're motivated to learn and eager to apply what they learn to their work or other situations. So you'll recall the brain connects new information to existing neural pathways. We talked about that. So building on what we already know is important. Adults, we want to understand the relevance of new information. What's in it for me? How does it apply to them? They also like to share new information and skills and apply it soon after the training. So it's really helpful, I think, to let your staff be able to train back, to teach back to other members of the team, maybe information that they got at a training or conference, and talk about the concepts and the resources that they received. And because adults have life experiences to draw from, they're usually really good at problem solving. Also, repetition and practice are so important to strengthen connections in the brain between new and existing information. Right. And I think an example of this when I was thinking about repetition and practice, and especially a new APS worker, usually the new worker feels a little uncomfortable to do the door knock, right? The first face-to-face visit, there may be a little anxiety with that, especially if they don't have a lot of experience of doing this in the field, of going out to the field and seeing clients and families. But as they do it over and over again, they begin to kind of develop their own style, and it becomes more comfortable. They feel more confident in finding themselves in their style and really being able to get their foot in the door. So the more you do something, the more comfortable you become, and the more confident and the more confident. Finally, adults appreciate a learning environment that's supportive, that's positive, that's got them engaged, and has shorter training sessions, whereby the information is more chunked, right? Rather than a lot of complex and information overload. So let's take a minute and we're going to focus on the importance of repetition and practice for adult learners, because it has an important direct relationship to training. So we're going to talk about repetition and practice. So as adults build new knowledge on what they already know, that's really helpful. But what if learners have little prior knowledge or experience with the new material being learned, and their ability to fully understand it and grasp it and remember after one training is really going to be limited. So repetition of those key concepts, especially as they apply in different areas of practice, builds and reinforces those connections in the brain. And learning becomes more meaningful, more intentional, and more permanent. Repetition combined with opportunities for practice helps build good work habits as well. The more we do something, right, the better we become and the more accurate we become at performing that task. So we're going to revisit this idea later as we talk about supporting our staff in different phases of learning. So we've recognized that adults share common characteristics, but when it comes to learning, and many of us also have individual ways, we have preferences of how we like to learn information and how we like to take it in. So let's go on to that. We use our senses, right? Vision, hearing, touch, smell, as we take in new information and connect it to that existing networks in our brain. And most of us use more than one sense at a time, right? So this slide kind of shows examples of how trainers use multisensory inputs to enhance learning. We incorporate pictures, diagrams, discussions, videos, role plays, and other activities into your training. All of these different ways are good ways to help engage learners so that they're using multiple senses in the learning process. So if you're a visual learner, you might really enjoy reading an article, looking at diagrams, pictures. Auditory learner, you might favor or enjoy listening to a podcast. If you're a tactile learner, maybe doing a team building exercise with a group where you've got to follow directions and build a structure out of string and straws may really help you learn this new information. And smell, when your investigator goes out into a hoarded or unsanitary home environment, really no picture can ever do justice to describe the smell, right? Correct? So let's go on. So in addition to multisensory inputs, research has shown that there's additional strategies that support long-term learning and retention. So a model called AGES identifies 4 components, which are attention, generation, emotion, and spacing. So learners can promote retention and recall by creating an environment, or actually, I'm sorry, trainers can promote retention and recall by, you want to create a training environment that's free from distractions. Sometimes I honestly think that's hard to do. Virtually, when staff are sitting at their cubicle taking a training, someone might come up and interrupt them, or that they're at home and doing some virtual training and similar things happening. Also encouraging learners to link new content to something they know, which we talked about, and helping them experience positive emotions to promote memory and attention. Does anybody have an example, and you can feel free to unmute yourself or type in the chat, of what you think that might look like, creating positive emotions in a training situation? I'll give you a minute just to reflect on that. And, you know, perhaps that could look like keeping them engaged, asking them questions to gain their perspective, and just making the training fun. And then we've also learned that scheduling training sessions at a steady pace with breaks in between, not overwhelming the learner with too much information or detail, is really helpful. Again, chunking the training. So I want to point you to your participant guide. It has several links to more information about the AGES model, and you'll find that information about the AGES model on page 10. And I do want to point out here into my last question that I believe it's Brianne said, helping learners feel more relaxed helps others feel more comfortable with asking questions. Definitely trying to create a relaxed training environment, one that solicits engagement from participants. And someone else said positive encouragement during training really helps the learning. Yes, helping learners feel encouraged, giving them positive validation, all of that really helps, I think, and benefits learners in a training. So now that we talked about some of the characteristics of adult learners, let's consider what some of the common barriers to learning could be. Go on to the next slide here. So learning is really, it's a catalyst for change, right? And we all know how we feel about change. Sometimes that doesn't feel comfortable. And learners need to be challenged. We need to be taken out of our comfort zones. But what happens when we get taken out of our comfort zone? Fear, anxiety, and confusion. And all of those emotional states can really interfere with learning. And it can make it more difficult, more challenged. A lot of times we might be afraid to make a mistake. And that can really keep people from participating fully. And as mentioned earlier, not understanding why, or how does this training material relate to me? What's in it for me? Why is this beneficial? So people, it's really important, I think, for people to know the why. And again, and somebody just mentioned this in the chat, we all learn best in an emotionally supportive training environment where the expectations, the objectives and the relevance of this training are clear, and how it's going to apply to me, and what is the intent that I walk away with. And so it's really beneficial when the atmosphere encourages engagement and participation. So let's summarize this section and what we've kind of talked about here. Summarize that with you. So gaining new knowledge, skills, and attitudes through training present ongoing opportunities and challenges to your staff. As APS supervisors, you are a wealth of information. You are the best resource for encouraging and guiding your staff through the learning process and really ensuring that the skills acquired are applied and that they're practiced. So be clear about the training objectives and how they are linked to job performance. And you've got to plan and carve out time for review and practice opportunities and give constructive feedback. Do role plays or simulation exercises in team building meetings to build on the concepts that they've learned, and have staff teach back at a team meeting what they've learned in a training that they've attended. So understanding and utilizing key principles of adult learning will help you really succeed as in your role as a trainer. So we're going to go on to and talk a little bit about different training settings and techniques. So now that we've talked about how adults learn, some common and individual characteristics of adult learners, and some of the barriers to learning and what those can be, let's look at more closely at training itself. APS staff training, it happens in a variety of ways, in a variety of settings. And supervisors have a variety of training techniques to use depending on what is to be learned and really the skill level of that learner. Is this a brand new worker? Is it a more experienced, seasoned worker? So we're going to start by looking at the settings in which APS training can take place. So it can be formal classes, one-on-one supervisory sessions, team meetings, individual assignments, and on-the-job experiences in the field. So we're all kind of familiar with formalized training sessions, and those are usually led by a professional trainer. They can be done virtually. A couple of years ago, I believe they were done in classroom, or they could also look like e-learning. Those are also examples of formalized training. The training, again, can be done in person or virtually, and e-learning's designed often, the learner can be doing it on their own time, at their own pace, and it can be done in a variety of locations. So examples of less formal training settings include one-on-one, supervisory sessions that, especially you're having a lot of those one-on-one staff sessions, you're having those one-on-one individual supervisory sessions, especially with new staff. You also provide training when you plan structured learning opportunities. You may have a new worker shadow another more seasoned worker in the field. New staff learn by accompanying and observing experienced staff members and their different styles and approaches as they carry out APS work. And gradually, by putting newly learned information and skills into practice in on-the-job situation, new workers are able to go out and try it on for size, if you will. They get a chance to actually walk through these new skills and apply it on the new cases that they're being assigned. Team meetings or team trainings are other good settings for learning together, helping each other, and involving staff in helping to prepare and present training topics. So teaching back to each other. For example, having a staff member share about a training they attended on domestic abuse and sharing the resources for clients in these situations with their coworkers in a team meeting. Kind of lost my place here for a moment, so go on to the next slide. Here we are. As supervisors, and you're probably familiar with those unexpected, unscheduled events and they really provide opportune times and moments for learning. Teachable moments evolve from not only mistakes or misunderstandings, but also from successful outcomes as well, things that went well on a particular case. These are all catalysts for meaningful learning, reflection, problem solving, and improved performance. So I'd like to take a minute here and ask any of you to unmute yourselves or to type in the chat an example of a teachable moment that you've had with your staff. You'd like to go ahead and share an example.
You guys are awful quiet and for
Right.
Okay.
We might have to go run around wherever you're at. for a
I
few
will go
minutes.
ahead
Shall I
and
place?
share.
Thanks,
All right,
Maria.
great.
So I hope this is what you're looking for. I have someone who was out in the field and she was not sure what to do because the family wanted to do one thing and they had a power of attorney, but the client had a wife, and there was conflict, and she wanted to know if legally APS could do something. So in conversations with her, kind of reminded her what the role of APS is and what we can and cannot do, and how you can work together with law enforcement. And based on some of the events that happened, law enforcement actually took over and their legal team made a decision that did not involve APS necessarily making a decision as to what should happen with this client, but just kind of reminding her and getting her to think again about what the role is when you are in a crisis situation and how to take a step back to analyze the situation. The outcome was good, because the client was able to get what the client needed at that moment. But I'm hoping that's kind of what you're looking for.
Yeah, that is an excellent example, Maria, and thank you for sharing that. So this, it sounded kind of like a complex situation that was happening there between the client's family and maybe some of the decisions the client wanted to make. And so you were able to kind of talk her through that and get her to take a step back and really just kind of reflect on what APS's role was in this situation, which I think that's so important. And, to kind of see, were there other agencies involved who, maybe, that fell, like you said, it actually kind of sounds like it fell into law enforcement's kind of jurisdiction there to make some decisions and be able to move forward. So yes, that's a great example of a teachable moment. And thanks for unmuting yourself and sharing that with us. Does anybody else have anything they'd like to add?
I would think that most conversations with anybody, especially those of us who have children, are teachable moments.
Yes.
So, and I'm not going to just bring it up about APS, but most of your conversations are teachable moments, whether it's something that I thought I knew, and when you're doing a staffing with your staff, they might bring it to your attention that I was wrong. So I think most of our conversations are teachable moments. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, thanks for adding that, John. No, absolutely. When you're bringing in different perspectives, you know, and your workers certainly are sharing that. Hey, all of that is good, and we can all have teachable aha moments. Again,
For
that
me-
idea of being a lifelong learner, right?
Yeah, for me, I think when the investigator comes back from the field and complete the risk assessment case plan, and then they submit their risk assessments and case plan, and I think I use that moments as the teachable moments, so I can talk with the investigator and share their information and my ideas and my opinions, and so I used that moment when I review the cases, the assessments and plans.
It's a great example. And it's, you know, a great opportunity is when you're kind of going through that case plan and you're looking at their risk assessment and you're helping them, it sounds like, critically think, bringing up some more questions, maybe offering a different perspective in regards to the risks or the safety of that client. So thank you for unmuting yourself. Absolutely. I think case reviews are a great way to be able to have those teachable moments.
I think also is to see the new challenges that are out in the field with COVID and stuff. I did a Gemba walk yesterday with one of my staff who were struggling, and I didn't realize how convoluted things have become because of COVID, whether it's like reduced staffing hours, modified schedule for social workers. So to me, that was like, oh, I didn't realize that. Now I see why it takes you longer to do something.
Right. Thank you for bringing that up. I mean, COVID has just brought a whole nother dynamic, right? Overlay into the work that APS, your team is doing. And I think, you know, having a moment, you know, to shadow your staff or doing a team visit or whatever is just an eye-opening situation. And in this new way that we have to approach cases in the reality of, you know, working cases through COVID. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, well, thank you all. Great input. I appreciate that. So we'll go on, I guess, if no one has anything else to add. So workshops and conferences and workshops, they offer off-site training settings that provide attendees training content and materials that can be brought back and shared with the team. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier. And they also, it's great because when your staff attend these type of settings, workshops, conferences, they get to network with other professionals in the field, maybe other workers from other states or counties, and kind of see what they have in common or what other programs might be doing differently. So those are wonderful learning opportunities for your staff. And finally, APS supervisors need to plan for and carve out time for staff to attend those mandatory trainings as well. And a lot of times the content in regards to these type of trainings, I'm sure you're all familiar, right, with these agency trainings that we all take. So again, you have to allow time for your staff to be able to get this more generic agency-wide training. So before we go on to talk a little bit more about training techniques, are there any questions or comments about what we just went through together? And if not, we'll move onward and upward regarding training techniques. So as mentioned earlier, there are a variety of training techniques that can be used in training with your staff, depending on the type of information, the content that's to be learned, and the skill level of the learner. So matching the appropriate technique with the needs of the trainee is successful, is key to successful learning. In this segment, we're going to look at some of these training techniques and then use a group activity to further explore them. Okay. So I'd like to start by asking you to type in the chat to share one or two training techniques that you've already used with your staff. And just to give you an example, it could be reading a case study and then having your staff respond to 3 questions following the reading. So just think about a couple of different training techniques that you use, and feel free to type that in the chat with us. Okay. Reviewing policy with them during huddles. I think that's a great way to kind of go over the different policies and procedures. Visual aids. Yeah, infographics. Discussions and brainstorming. Absolutely. PowerPoints. Yeah, on different content.
Completing a task together. Showing how to use our system in Google Meets and then having them show me.
I can relate to that.
We did
I
a little
need them
bit
to
this
show me
morning.
Google Meets, Lori.
Oh,
All right, smiley face. Okay. All right, great responses. Thank you for sharing that. Okay. As we've just acknowledged, there's a number of different training techniques, and you came up with a lot of them that are listed here on this slide. Each technique has its own characteristics and its own benefits. For example, using a lecture, it allows a trainer to present to a larger group of people, where all of the trainees are getting the content at one time. Shadowing or on-the-job technique allows an individual learner to see and understand the nuances of a particular job as it's performed in the field, as well as it gives them exposure to the different styles that investigators might use in their case investigations. Using several techniques in combination during training can be effective since they allow the learner to input new information in a variety of ways. So you could use a reading assignment with new staff to help them learn about agency policies and procedures. And I liked the suggestion that one person used where they look at the policies and kind of do a huddle group discussion together. And another example is using an instructional video as a lead into a follow-up group discussion in a topic-specific area, such as investigating allegations of financial exploitation. And so your participant guide, I want to point you there as a handout of listings of many of these different training techniques, as well as the characteristics and benefits of each. And you can find that information on page 18 and page 21 of your participant guide. Now, Lori, we're getting ready to lead into our 20-minute, our group exercise, our breakout exercise, and I'm wondering if it makes sense to take a break.
Yeah, I think that would be good. And during the break, if people will make sure that they have turned to page 21 in their participant guide, so they're ready, kind of ready to rock and roll in the group activity when they come back, I think that would work really well. You want it to be 10 minutes?
Yeah, why don't we do a 10-minute break? And then, so we'll come back, let's just make it 9:40.
Okay.
And then I just, for this group activity, this breakout activity, Lori has sent you 2 links in your chat and she's given you some instruction for that. I think you went ahead and sent that, right, Lori?
I'm sending it right now, the full thing.
Okay. So you can see those are going to be a couple of links that you're going to go to. So yeah, if you go ahead and take, we're going to give you a couple extra minutes here. So if you could take a look at page 21, the instructions for the exercise, and then I believe the worksheet itself is on page 22. So kind of familiarize yourself with that. I think that'll help you.
Brenda, do you want me to tell them which assignment they're going to have when they come back?
Yeah, let's go ahead and share that.
Okay, so group 1 will do number 1, and that is Banaka, Bree, Cecilia, and Mary Lynn. The people doing the second exercise is Ed, Emily, Jessica, and Jessica's phone, Joe and Rita. And then in the third group doing the third piece of that is John. Is it Kai or Kay? I'm never sure.
Key.
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 Okay.
Yeah.
And Lisa and Maria. So if anybody has any questions, speak up while we at this point go into the break.
So Lori, we have 4, is it 4 groups?
We have 3 groups because
3 groups.
You said you wanted at least 4 people in each group.
Yeah.
So
And so just to give you an idea, if you want to go ahead and look through the instructions of the group activity, you're each going to work on developing some training for a particular area. So group 1 will do the group 1 task assignment. Group 2 will do the group 2 task assignment, and group 3 will do the group 3, number 3 task assignment.
Yep.
So if you want to go ahead and look through that, those are the different tasks that you'll be assigned to.
Okay, do you want me to put them in their groups now while they're on break?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
Okay, we're going to do that. We'll see you all back in your breakout rooms in, actually it's now 9 minutes. We cut them short. My apologies.
Uh-oh.
We'll see you back at 9:40.
And Lori, do you want to go ahead and stop the recording and pick it up again?
As long as you guys help me remember.
Great, Lori.
All right,
All
welcome
right.
back, everyone. Brenda, they are coming
Yeah.
back and
Yep, everybody's popping back in.
perfect. Back to you then.
All right, everybody. So we're going to go ahead and have the spokesperson from each group kind of share with us about the different training settings, the different techniques, and some of the support materials they came up with for their particular task. And I am going to be busy over here typing up your responses. So as we go through this together. So let's go ahead and start with breakout group 1. And you're going to tell us about training strategies to increase a new staff member's knowledge of the aging process. And I believe it's Cecilia.
Correct.
Our spokes.
Okay. So for the training on the aging process, we came up with, there's different settings that we can do. We can do a formal setting, which would be maybe different offices or different units coming together for the training. We can also do it in small groups, so we could do it individually within our own unit. So every supervisor will be able to do a training within their own unit. Or we can also do it individually, which would be working with each one of our investigators individually, or especially the new investigators that are coming on board.
Very good.
So for the techniques, there's different techniques that we can use in support materials. So we are talking about maybe they're showing videos, having a training discussion, presentations by community agencies or community members that can give a presentation to everyone, do a peer-to-peer. So have investigators kind of join together and discuss the aging process and, maybe share their experiences that they've had. We also looked at the aging process workbook that's on here, which we thought was a great tool. So definitely using that aging process workbook and having them take that quiz and, kind of reviewing the answers, together as a group to discuss, all the information that we found out. And there's also YouTube videos and different links to the aging process that we can use.
Very good. Which site was the aging process workbook on?
It was through the apstarc.acal.gov. Yes.
Okay, so the TARC website. Very good.
Yes.
Well, that sounds like an excellent training that you've put together. And does anybody have any questions for group 1 or Cecilia? Well, great responses, group 1. Good job.
Thank you.
So with that, let's go to group number 2, which is looking at developing training strategies for staff needing to increase knowledge and skills for serving adults living with disabilities. So group 2 presenter, I'll let you go ahead and take it over. You'd like to go ahead and unmute yourself, and you can share your responses with us.
All right, I guess I've been nominated to be the spokesperson for the group.
Thank you, Joe. Sounds like a good nomination to me.
We decided on shadowing,
Okay.
coaching, and role plays.
Sounds
And
great.
we felt that, and we picked the adult to have a cognitive disability. So maybe that hands-on learning, that hands-on demonstrations would help them grasp the material or the knowledge easier than like in lecture format or note-taking.
Mhm.
The example I use with my group is I was a special ed teacher at one time, and we had a classroom set up like a hotel room where we taught the kids how to make the beds, how to wash the linens. We also had a partnership with 2 of the local restaurants where the kids can go and learn how to use the dishwasher, learn how to write short orders down.
Wow, that sounds like a great, it's almost like a simulated activity.
Yeah.
Great example.
And then the only kind of support materials that we really needed was one, the community support, because essentially these would be the kind of jobs that these young adults would get, would be the service industry, the retail industry, and also just, the materials to teach the kids, such as like a bed, bath towels, sheets, whatever the case may be.
Very good. I actually think I'm going to move this hands-on demonstration over to the different training techniques, because I think that's where you wanted it to go. All right. Great. Sounds like a fantastic training, Joe. And I really like your idea of kind of this hands-on, walking them through and partnering with other service providers in the community. Sounds like a great idea. Great ideas.
Thank you.
Anything, anybody else would like, any comments or questions for Joe with group 2? Okay, if not, we'll go on to group 3. If the spokesperson would like to go ahead and unmute themselves and share their responses in regards to their training. And that's about increasing staff's knowledge and skills for investigating reports of alleged financial abuse.
Okay, so in our group, for training settings, we put that we would have group, like a PowerPoint presentation or a presenter. We could bring in community partners such as law enforcement, someone within the agency who is an expert on financial exploitation. We could even bring in an attorney or someone in accounting that would help us understand and become more familiar. And we would also do on-the-job opportunities to learn.
Okay, so like shadowing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm just putting a plus because the first one you talked about having the attorney come and present or the subject matter expert. It sounds like you're talking about a more formal setting where they might do some lecture or share a PowerPoint.
Yes.
Am I right about that? Okay.
Yes.
So I just put a plus up there just to kind of say, denote that you were also talking about using a formal setting. And then I'm going to put a plus here for shadowing. So on the job. Okay, did you have other training settings?
Okay, no.
So those were the 2 you wanted to focus on, it sounds like.
Well, and on the job opportunities.
Okay, let me just put that down here. So So it might just not be shadowing a field investigator, but it might be sitting on the hotline or other shadowing opportunities. Am I
Yes.
right about that? Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. And then did you want to share with us about some of the training techniques you came up with?
Yeah, we would provide some reading material, to help with the understanding of the financial records, what they actually mean, what's the verbiage that is used. Because one very common thing is looking at the date that transaction actually happened and when it posted. So being able to differentiate, the different information that are on financial records. We would pick an easy financial records, like a bank statement, and go through it with them and have them practice. We would also read through not as complex, but a little bit more in-depth case that is only about financial exploitation, so that they can have a better understanding of what the case would require. Some of the techniques would be also going out and shadowing and more experienced employee, so that they could learn what questions to ask the client and what questions to ask an alleged perpetrator when completing those interviews, to
Mhm.
ensure that we are gathering the pertinent information that will help build the case.
Well, those sound like all great, really creative techniques. I like the idea of picking a bank statement and reviewing it together. And then also, I think there's a lot of value, of course, in shadowing those more experienced employees in regards to financial exploitation. And I really liked your idea about understanding verbiage and financial language, right? Some of the language we see in, legal documents, power of attorneys, trusts, other financial documents can be quite confusing. So really trying to explore some of that, I think that's a great strategy. Did you want to go ahead now and share some of the support materials?
Yes.
Okay,
So,
fantastic.
and looking at the websites that were provided to us, out of the TARC website, we, decided that the APS toolkit would be beneficial. And then
Absolutely.
out of the workforce, there is a video that shows AP interview. So that would also be beneficial.
It shows an APS interview. Was it a video?
Yeah, with an
did you
alleged
say?
perpetrator, interview.
And it's a video. Great. Anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think so, unless anyone from my team wants to add something else.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments for Team 3? Well, you guys did an awesome job on this assignment. So I want to ask, were those websites helpful to you? For those of you that got to take a look, you can just type yes or no. Or I really found a huge repository of information in both of those websites.
Yeah, I checked one of the material for financial exploitation,
Mhm.
and it has good contents, and I like their contents.
Yeah, I did too. Definitely a wonderful resource. And I think that's what we wanted you to take away from this, is because we know that you didn't have time to look at these resources in depth, and spend a lot of time reading through them. But I think our hope is that your takeaway will be, when you're going to create some training exercises for your staff in the future, you'll have these two areas of reference that you can go to help build your training. So with that, are there any other comments before we move on in regards to this exercise we did together today? Okay, if not, good job, everybody. Thanks for your participation. So I am going to stop sharing the whiteboard, and I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. Bear with me just a moment here. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit now about the different phases of learning. So how do learning principles, training settings, and various techniques apply to a team that ranges from brand new workers to more experienced and seasoned workers? So in this section, we're going to pull all that together by looking at training supports during different phases of learning. And I want to start with a question for all of you. So think back to learning about driving a car. How did you feel at your first lesson? And I'd like you to take a moment, reflect on that question, and then share your thoughts in the chat. And Lori will help us review those.
Not seeing anything yet.
Okay.
John says excited, freedom, excited, but share is Bianca. I felt excited, but also a little scared. I wanted to do a good job and not wreck my parents' car, is what Rita says. Yeah, there is that. Bree said, it was a long time ago, but I'm sure I was happy to start the journey to teenage freedom. Jessica, so I do not drive. I know how, but get anxious a lot. LOL.
Uh-huh.
But it was exciting.
Yeah. All right. So it sounds like you all felt this resounding theme of anxiety came up, and at the same time, excitement, right? It was exciting. You were going to have this newfound freedom. And I love the person that said, you know, hopefully I didn't wreck my parents' car. I remember getting into a little fender bender not long after I learned how to drive. So that's always interesting too. Now, I want to ask you, if you were going to take a driver refresher course next week, what would you need? So in thinking about going back and taking a refresher course next week, what is it that you would need? So again, if you could just take a moment and type your response in the chat, that'd be great.
Okay, relearned how to back up into a parking space without a camera from Bree. The driver's manual from Rita. A simulated drive test from Maria. Lisa, changes in the law that may affect driving today versus 35 years ago. I can't even tell you how long ago mine was. Oh.
Great responses, great. So you can see here, learning something for the first time is experienced differently than refreshing something you know. When you first learned to drive, it was all new information. You were skilled, you had little experience. You wouldn't be expected to be a competent driver after one lesson, right? So your brain pathway needed to grow and it needed to be reinforced. You needed frequent review and you needed frequent practice. Now compare that now to having years of practice and plenty of driving experience. You're very confident. You don't even have to think about it anymore. Most of us, a lot of us get into the practice of driving on automatic pilot. I know that's happened for me where I've missed a off ramp or another freeway I was supposed to get onto. But the idea is that you don't even have to think about what the next step is anymore. So building on what you already know, reviewing often, and having plenty of opportunity to practice makes learning at any stage meaningful and permanent. So we're going to talk about the different phases of learning and how they apply to the training needs of staff with ever-changing levels of knowledge and experience. As you see on the screen, we all move through different stages of learning anytime we learn something new. So this graphic represents a theory of adult learning that features the 4 different stages of learning. The first stage is unconscious incompetent. And this refers to a brand new learner who doesn't know what they don't know yet. So they're brand new. They're new to the game. They don't know what they're supposed to know, and they don't know it. And usually learners during this phase, it's really hard for them to retain complex information during a training. So, because they don't have those neural pathways formed yet. And I want to move on now to the second stage. And this is conscious incompetent. And this refers to some learners who have had some training. However, they know what they don't know. And the good thing is they're able to retain and apply the new information. And they're really in the best mental space to learn new information because they have the brain pathways to start building on and to understand the relevance of the new information to improved job performance. But this can be a very uncomfortable place for people to be in. And for example, you might have an investigator, they've had some training, they've started getting cases, maybe they're just getting mostly self-neglect cases, but they know at some point they're going to get those abuse cases by others. And for instance, physical abuse. So the new investigator knows they have to learn how to recognize what physical abuse by others can look like and what questions to ask in their investigation. But they realize they're not quite there yet, and they don't have that competent knowledge. So the third stage, conscious competent. This refers to learners who have ongoing training, which they can apply effectively in their field work. These team members are often the best ones to have new staff shadow because they still remember how hard it was and how comfortable it was not to be at that competent level. So the fourth stage I want to talk about is unconscious competent. This refers to learners who can carry out complicated tasks with little thought because they've become so adept at performing these tasks. APS staff members in this phase can unconsciously pick up cues from an alleged victim and abusers, but they may have a hard time articulating or explaining to new staff what precisely they were seeing or how they are coming to these decisions because it just comes naturally. And I'm sure some of you may even be at that unconscious competent level, or even have some workers in your program that are at that level. So how long it takes a learner to move from one phase to the next for any given area of learning and competency depends on their own learning pace. Some learners may not reach the final stage. They may not get to this unconscious competent level, but they're still able to perform the task with competence. so we've kind of broken down these 4 areas for you again. And so unconscious incompetent. It's important here that while staff at any level of experience will revisit this phase even briefly when learning something new, it often applies to new staff in their first months on the job. So coming attractions is there is going to be another module about onboarding new staff. And we're going to look more in depth at the specific needs of new staff. Now, I'm going to go through these. We kind of break each of these down again and talk about these different areas in detail. And I'm going to go through them pretty briefly, just based on our time. So conscious incompetent, again, they're aware of what they don't know. This can be a very uncomfortable space for workers to be in. They may question during this phase their own ability to do their job. And during this time, they really need encouragement from their supervisor. And they may need to go back and review some previous trainings. And so we'll go ahead and move through this. Conscious competent. Again, they know what these learners in this phase know what they're doing and why. They're just gaining more and more experience and confidence. And they have a lot of familiarity and more comfortable with all the different types of cases that they may be involved in. And if they encounter new situations, they're really able to use their problem solving skills to come up with solution-focused interventions. So they're building on those existing neural pathways that they've formed. And unconscious competent, we talked about them as well. And these are learners who have mastered a particular area of practice, or maybe several areas. And they, like I said, is kind of like automatic pilot. They're really able to move through the steps of the case and sometimes, not even consciously think about it. So let's move forward. So in the phases of learning can be a helpful guide when planning for the training needs of your team. It's important to remember that all staff, new and experienced, they move in and out of these phases at different times as they encounter new tasks, new content, policy changes, or new information. So in your leadership role, you can promote and model a mindset of growth, one of continuously learning, right? We're all learning new information all the time. This is a mindset that will help create positive expectations and motivate your staff. So we're going to move on now to section 4. We're going to talk about the transfer of learning. And we've got a 5-minute group activity here where we wanted to break you up. And we want you to talk about for 5 minutes ways that if training has been effective with staff. And then we can have you come back from your groups and comment on that. Lori, shall we go ahead and go to those different breakout rooms? I know we're running up against the clock here.
Yep. I'm going to send everybody 5 minutes, guys. Thanks.
So just talk about when you go to your breakout rooms, how do you know that the learning has really stuck with your staff? What are ways that you measure that? And again, why don't we have people with the closest birthday to today be our spokesperson? So we'll go ahead and send you there now.
Okay, here you go. Parisa, do you think we're gonna lose people?
Yeah, I was just gonna, that's the reason I was coming back. Because I know they were expecting the training to be over at 10:30.
I know,
So
and
I'm
I'm
just a
like,
little concerned. And then I know
What
you guys
is?
usually do feedback after as well, so I didn't know what the plan was
Yeah.
for that either. So
So the
yeah,
plan
I'm a little
was
concerned that they're gonna be
gonna pop off.
pop off and that they,
Everybody joined their
Schedule.
groups, so they
Yeah.
are in their groups, and we'll just have to get them out ASAP. And I don't know how best to get feedback from them since we're running late.
yeah. And I know historically when we schedule them for a certain amount of time,
They leave. I know.
well, either they leave or
They're upset.
they're upset because they have other
Yes.
things scheduled. So
I get
Yeah.
that.
So let's make sure we do a very quick debrief, and then do you want me just to send them an email and say we'd really like your feedback? Because I know you're gonna do you do an evaluation as well, right?
yeah, we send out a survey through our evaluators.
Do you think we just want to wait for that?
Let me
It's up to
see.
you. We'll do it
Let
either.
me make sure we can share that. I think we can. I don't see a problem, but let me just check with Julie. And then that would be good because then, we can make sure that we don't fatigue them with feedback.
Yeah, yeah. And I just don't think we can keep them longer than this, like
Yeah.
5+ minutes over time.
So what about these transfer of learning activity? Lori, do you?
Why don't we
just
tell them to
want
do
me-
it on their own?
Okay, and it's in the participant guide.
Yeah, I think we have to because of time.
Yep, I agree.
So, all right, so we're at 3 minutes. I'm gonna give them a 2-minute warning.
I'm going to call Julie because I'm not hearing back from her yet. So let me call her because I think we need to know that about the survey. So I'll be right back.
Well, we never know how long it's gonna take.
You don't, it's a pilot.
Yeah, we're piloting it, so we know.
Okay, I'm going to close all room and it'll give them 60 seconds and then they'll be back.
Okay.
But they must be talking because nobody's popping back in right
Mhm.
now, which they have the option of doing.
Right,
If they were like, we need to get out of here, I think they would have popped. it back in.
right.
So 19 seconds and counting. And here we've got people coming back. We got
Coming
8
back.
seconds. And we'll have everybody. Brenda, did you mean for your slides to be closed?
No. Okay, let me go back to sharing my screen.
Welcome back, everybody. We're going to try to get you out in the next few minutes. We know we're running you over.
Yeah, my apologies about that. So we're going to get through this and go through this information pretty quickly. So I'd like group 1 to go ahead and unmute themselves, and please go ahead and share your responses.
Do we have?
And group one, are you with us? And I'm not sure who's the spokesperson from group one.
Yeah, we forgot to pick a spokesperson, so I'll go.
Okay, thank you, Brianne.
I mean, the main thing would be the case reviews. Because that's, especially working from home, you know, that's kind of the main thing that we have to go off of. Kind of seeing less questions about the same thing. So just knowing that they've kind of grasped it because they're not asking anymore. And just generally just kind of talking with them, asking them questions, and just seeing what their answers are will tell us if they're grasping it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and you mentioned doing a lot of this through case review, seeing what their questions are, and maybe if they aren't asking the same questions, that kind of lets you know that they have an understanding of that particular, some of that content. So with that, thank you very much for your responses. Let's go on to group two. If you want to share out what you came up with.
Yeah, I'm the spokesperson for two, but I think we misunderstood the question. So we were talking about how you know their learning has stopped, and we were discussing.
I think that's a piece of it too, right? Because we want to know if they're applying it or if they're not. So if you feel they're stopped, that is, you know, really a part of this too, right?
Right. So we were talking about, you know, feeling that everyone wants to do a good job. They don't want to come here feeling like they're just going to do the minimal. But when they hit a roadblock, it seems like they forget everything that they've already learned and they get stuck. And they feel overwhelmed. They kind of shut down. They don't feel like they can move forward. So we talked about, you know, encouraging them to move forward and how we could help them with that. So keeping them off that negative role.
Yeah. Keeping them, you know, from looking at themselves negatively, and like, hey, you have done some really great stuff in the past, and like reflect on what's really working well, right? To get them unstuck and to be, that is great. Wonderful response, group two. Group three, let's move on to you.
All right, I'm not the closest birthday. It was Maria, but I took it over for Maria because she didn't want to speak again.
Okay.
John, you're not supposed to do that. You're not supposed to throw me under the bus, John. I thought we were friends.
Yeah.
We got quality of work improves.
Okay.
Asking more questions during the training. So they're trying to ask and pull more information out of the trainer to show that they're, you know, they're listening and they want to learn.
Yeah.
Building their confidence. More receptive and open to training new staff. Comfortable with staff shadowing them. So they're comfortable with their jobs and with all the training that they have. And you can tell that they're listening and they're more comfortable, that they're willing to train and have somebody shadow them.
Great responses again. Being open to let people shadow them, that they're asking, they're really critical thinking. You see that happening during their training because of the questions they're asking. So great responses, everyone. Thank you for your participation in this exercise. Now, with that, Lori and I are mindful, you know, this is a pilot training and it's gone a little over. And so we're very cognizant of your time. So what I want to let you know is the last part of this training is that on page 29 of your participant guide, we would like you to do a transfer of learning exercise after you leave this training. And then maybe when you get into a meeting with your supervisors in the next couple of months, that you could share this transfer of learning exercise. And what it is, it's really you putting together a training for your staff. So you can choose a particular topic, and you can there's a worksheet there for you to look at the different settings, what type of techniques that you would like to use, and maybe getting some content from APSWI or from the TARC website as some resource material that you can use in your training. So I also want to bring your attention to some tips that are also shared in your participant guide if you're a new supervisor. Again, those 2 reference websites that we gave you, they have wonderful training content and materials for new supervisors as well. So I certainly encourage you to check it out when you get a chance. So again, I want to thank you for taking the time to participate in this training module. In closing, just thank you all for being such a great group and all of your participation. And it's been great to meet you and get to spend time with you and get to know you today. So with that, Lori, I'm probably going to go ahead and say goodbye to everybody and leave the training, and you can debrief and close however that makes sense. Does that sound like a plan at this point?
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great day, everybody.
We had planned on doing an evaluation plus Delta with you guys now. I don't know whether people can hang around. I don't want to impose on your time. I do know Arizona will send you an evaluation. I'm going to ask you to stay if you've got time to tell us what you think, but otherwise to dismiss you. So it's up to you whether you got a few minutes to stay on and just tell us what you liked and what you thought would have been better. So give people a second to leave if they're going to leave. And if you're staying, we'll start in just a minute. Okay. Thank you guys for those of you that could stay for staying. We really appreciate that. Let's start out first with, I'll go around the room and ask you what you liked and what you thought could have been better. Is that okay? Okay. John, you are in the upper left-hand corner for me, so I'm going to start with you.
I like that we're learning more new resources. We've learned some new websites today to pull those resources from to do the training. I also think that this was very appropriate at the right setting right now because we're getting ready to roll our new program for APS. So a lot of us will be doing training with staff to make sure that they understand our new system. So, and then I don't know if I really have anything that needed to be added. I think maybe as a trainer, when you're training, either it's with a group or individual, maybe having a part where, not roadblocks, but identifying as a trainer, you should be identifying your group or your individual, whether they're visual, interactive, tactile, whatever it is. So you can kind of base your training on what their needs are as far as to keep them interactive during the training, whether you're going to do hands-on or you're going to have visual and stuff like that.
Got it. Thank you. Yeah, and I having just recently had to take on a bunch of administrative, like software-y things where I was like back to square one, an idiot, not knowing didn't even know what I didn't know. I think you're right about your workers, even though they're proficient with APS, having to learn that new system are going to go back to that level. And
Yep.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that, John. Thank you for that. Lisa, what did you like and what could be improved?
Well, I liked the breakout sessions. I think they were more in depth than what we normally see, and you really had to think a little bit. And also linking, I'll piggyback on what John said, linking the resource, the links in really gives people insight into some things that are out there that may not necessarily have been shared with them in the past. And what I would say piggybacking off of what group 2 was talking about when do you know learning stops and how do you get past that? Like, what are some techniques to get past that with a
Okay.
person?
Yeah, there comes a time when people sort of get resistant because I already know everything. I think, is that part of what you were dealing with there?
Yeah, but also I think what, like John's saying, we're anticipating a lot of struggles with my APS, and people that know the material are going to struggle. But I think that happens sometimes just without such a big dramatic change for individuals, and how can a supervisor recognize that, and how can they, what are some techniques they can use to get past it?
Yeah, okay, got it. Thank you for that, Lisa. Rita, you're up.
Okay, so I also liked the breakout sessions. They were pretty good. They were a little short. I shouldn't say that. The first one was long enough. The second one, the 5 minutes,
It was too
felt
short.
a little short to me. Yeah.
I'm thinking we're almost going to have to add a half hour to this if we're going to do what we need to do. And we're trying not to make these longer, but
It's
unless
hard.
there's something you think we could cut out. So
No. But I did like the resources being provided as well. So, and there's always a challenge when people are hitting their roadblocks on knowing how to move them forward. So
yeah,
any new ideas would be great for me.
Okay, perfect. Joe, you're up.
I thought it was good. Like I was telling Binica earlier, I'm a little nitpicky because I was a teacher. I think the only thing that I would change or maybe add is maybe give some examples or maybe have some videos or something to kind of accompany like strategies.
Okay.
And maybe just a little bit more time because like Rita said, I feel like it was kind of short in some areas when we were having good discussion.
Yeah. No, it's always a crapshoot, so to speak, as to whether you got the timing right. So appreciate that. All right. And Maria, what are your thoughts about this?
So I really, enjoyed, and I take the most out of the group breakout sessions, especially like when there's feedback after the sessions, because one thing is to have a group breakout session with just the people, but when you incorporate everyone else, you do learn more, and the resources for me were very good.
Excellent. I appreciate that. Bianca, you're up. What were your thoughts?
I enjoyed the resources too, because just looking for that few minutes, I found that competency workbook about the aging process, and there was a quiz in there that was so in depth that I was like, where was this 5-10 years ago when we were learning, so I really enjoy when you guys give us those resources that we're not aware of. Either the class has to be, I think it does need to be a little bit longer, but like Joe said, adding in those different ways that we're talking about adult learners, how they learn. We all learn differently. And for me, I don't do well when you're just talking to me, and I admit to being very distracted because of that.
Yeah, me too.
I need to have those activities or have those videos or whatever it may be, just to have a change up. Just I talking to me is not gonna.
Doesn't make you learn it right off.
Yeah.
One thing they didn't tell you in this is the thing I always remember: you have to hear things 7 times in 7 different ways to remember it. And boy, that's true for me. Yeah. Well, thank you all for staying on. I'm sorry we imposed on your time so much, but it's very much appreciated, and it will go into restructuring the course so that it's a little bit longer and has some additional pieces. So thank you all, very much appreciated. We'll let you go from there. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now. So Susan, I actually have I have a call in 9 minutes. So Parisa, you're talking on mute, Susan.
Sorry, I keep forgetting that. I can stay on and we can talk with Brenda and Parisa if you want.
Parisa, do you have time? Because it's now a half hour
Right.
over what you were expecting.
Yeah, I have to leave in a few minutes, a couple minutes. So
Okay.
Did you agree with everything that was?
I did. I thought it was generally really positive, and I think they're right. I mean, I agree with them and you guys with your suggestion that maybe we need to make it a little bit longer.
Yeah.
And they didn't really see, it didn't really, even to me, and it sounds like the participants as well, didn't really seem like they could see a place where it could be shortened or cut out. I mean, everything seemed really relevant. And I just wanted to say, I think this trainer is really great. I mean, Jessica was as well. That's not, I don't mean that to take that away from Jessica. Jessica's a wonderful trainer too. But yeah, I thought this training went really well. I think she's a really great trainer, Jessica as well.
I liked Parisa that I know Brenda worked in a lot of additional examples from her own experience. So that really helps, you know, and it makes it real. She can relate to the supervisors really well because she's done it.
Yeah.
And it does make it longer. I can understand now how these things look like they can be 2 hours.
On
really,
paper, right? Yeah.
I know. So
if you stick to the script,
you know,
yeah.
you work
Yeah.
so hard to make it fit, but they're telling us we love the group discussions that
And
we
that-
need more.
yeah,
And so,
mhm.
you know, we're not going to cut that away from them. And
No.
so,
Susan, I think there is out there some kind of a quiz they can give their workers to find out if they're visual or auditory learners. I think we just pull one of those in
I do too. And I really did like the, how can you help a worker who is stuck, who's hit a roadblock?
Yeah.
What are some strategies, even if it's a handout? You know, we might mention it in the discussion, but say, here's some tips you can use, because we didn't put that in. And I thought that was a really valid point that they made.
Yeah, I think so too. I think.
Well, let me do up a little summary, Parisa, of the comments from today from the supervisors. I also have one to share with you on Jessica's team building. So all good, and some good ideas that we can use with your group to say, we got to make this each of them a little bit longer.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And then do you guys still want the results from our survey, or are you guys good?
Yeah.
Doesn't hurt, at least for the, maybe not individual feedback, but kind of the overall, if there's anything you think we want to.
Just kind of a summary
Okay.
of what you
Sure.
find. That'd be great.
Sure.
All right.
Okay.
Well, thanks everybody.
Take care, everyone.
I will call Brenda. Do you want me to call Brenda now? Why don't I do that, Lori, and you take the other one?
Yeah, I got to go to talking to New Jersey about competencies. So.
Okay. I'll catch up with you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.